It is getting towards the end of the day and I am getting ready for a hardcore reading session this evening. It's about 8:30 at night. It's still the summer, so it's not completely dark at this time, but it is beginning to get dark. So I thought I would show you my evening slash nighttime reading routine, and I'm hoping to read outside by candlelight, which I'm pretty excited about. I've done it a few times in the past few months and I just enjoy how atmospheric it is, so thought I would do the same thing today. And then once it gets completely dark, I'll show you what I do when it reaches bedtime, and I like to do some bedtime reading. So the book that I am currently reading is Women Who Did, Stories by Men and Women 1890 to 1914, which is a collection of short stories around the topic of the new woman, which is one of my favourite things to read about right now. The new woman came about during the 1890s and she was basically a bicycle riding, cigarette smoking, socially aware, politically aware, sexually aware woman who kind of shrugged off her predecessors and embraced modernity. And this has some fantastic writers in it. So I've already read two of the stories. One by Oscar Wilde called, let me find it, The Sphinx Without a Secret, which I liked. Didn't love it because it was the first one and I was trying to get used to the style again. And the second one was called The Buddhist Priest's Wife by Olive Schreiner. It's really nice to read some short stories because I don't always read short stories, so I've really enjoyed that. And next up we have two that I'd like to read this evening. We have The Yellow Drawing Room by Mona Caird, who is actually an author I'm reading full length at the moment. I'm reading her book The Wings of Azrael, which I've never seen anyone talk about, but it's really good so far. I'll talk about that more in the future. And then after that one we have The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, which I've actually already read but haven't read for a few years, and I want to see what I think about it now. I didn't love it loads and loads the first time, but I really think I'm going to enjoy it so much more this time. I'll talk a bit more about the new woman and the short stories in the collection once I get into the actual reading, but I suppose I should say that at this time, the 1890s kind of onwards, the short story was going through a very definitive moment when people were kind of pushing the boundaries of the short story, were discovering what it meant, discovering what they could do with it. And so one of the things that I suppose defines the short stories in this collection, or quite a lot of the short stories, is they have quite open endings. They kind of, you have this moment of like the new woman, short stories, Freud is becoming a thing and people are exploring imagination and dreams and that kind of thing, and the effect that your imagination has. And so what the writers like to do in these short stories is kind of hand the story over to you and let you come to your own conclusions, let you kind of sometimes decide the ending or decide what the characters mean. So they can be quite blurry, but I like it. It's testing my brain. So what I'm going to do now is get into some comfier clothes because I've been in this dress all day. Then I'm going to go and set up some candles, set up the cozy atmosphere, and I cannot wait. I have my tea, got my vegan millionaire's shortbread, just resting my eyes because they do feel slightly strained. But I'm halfway through the first short story I want to read tonight, The Yellow Drawing Room by Mona Caird, and I've read quite a bit from her now, like getting into the first of her novels I'm reading, now reading this, and I'm like, why are more people not talking about Mona Caird, who is just amazing? I mean, how she was writing in the 1890s and not the 2020s, I do not know, because she is perfect. So The Yellow Drawing Room is told from the perspective of a man who is being match-made with a woman called Venora, and she is basically the new woman. She's the new woman embodied. She has decorated her drawing room in yellow, and yellow is seen as this colour of empowerment, of kind of independence, and it is a sign of her being an independent woman. And the narrator really does not approve of this, but finds that he is strangely fascinated by her. And I love that. I love how I don't agree with the narrator, I agree with Venora, and I like how it's told from his perspective. It's making you think a lot. If it was told from her perspective and you were seeing it, I think you kind of fill in the gaps, like I was saying, into what she's thinking, what her perspective might be. I really love Mona Caird. She is such a talent, and there's something about her writing that I love. Sometimes I find it can be a bit obvious. You can see what her agenda is, but then I don't mind that either. I think that's a good thing as well. And having already read The Yellow Wallpaper, which I'm going to read next, that's the next short story in the collection, they're next to each other, I can already see the significance of the colour yellow. The colour yellow being the colours of the wall in the drawing room, the yellow wallpaper, both are symbols of kind of that independence. And in the yellow drawing room, Venora has chosen it herself. It's a sign of her own independence that she has decided. And in the Yellow Wallpaper, that's kind of flipped. It's kind of her, there's some question as to whether or to why the character in Yellow Wallpaper is in this room with the wallpaper moving. The wallpaper is kind of alive. Both, I think, are symbols of independence and oppression. If you haven't read anything by Mona Caird, she's hardly in print anymore, but you really need to. I feel so cosy, so warm. I mean, it's not been a completely warm day today, but things are cooling down now. I've got the candles. A bit worried I'm going to burn something down, or the Digby was going to catch his tail alight, but don't mind. I'm enjoying myself. I feel like I'm on holiday. I'm enjoying myself. I would highly recommend. I love it. I'm going to read some more now, try and finish The Yellow Drawing Room, then I'll probably be inside by the time I move on to The Yellow Wallpaper. And the final thing to do for the night is to say goodnight to the guinea pigs. Here I am, back in the comfort of my own room. I love my bookshelves at this time of night and just how lovely and homely it feels. I love my bookshelves behind me, and I have a Lumi lamp which casts as quite natural light, which I always used to go to sleep to. It gets dimmer as time goes on. I think it's about half an hour or maybe less, and the light gets darker and darker, so I use that kind of as a lamp, and it just lights things nicely. And I've just finished The Yellow Drawing Room, which I loved, and I don't know how to talk about it with you because I basically just want to read you the whole thing because there were so many parts of it to pick out. I'm not sure which bit to share with you, but I'll choose the bit that I think perfectly demonstrates just how powerful this book is. So we have our narrator, Mr. St. Vincent, and he is, you know, what you think of when you think of a Victorian gentleman with all the views that come in with it. Obviously not all Victorian gentlemen are like that, but he's kind of, you know, what you think of. And then we have Venora, who is the new woman. So this is Venora speaking. I'm going to paraphrase some of it to begin with, just so you can kind of get the gist of what it's about, but this is Venora speaking. My father never constrained me to move in any particular direction because of my sex. He has perhaps spoiled me. I have hitherto had only a joyous sense of drawing in what was outside and radiating out what was within me. When you describe your doctrines, I seem to see the doors of a dark prison opening out of the sunshine, and strange to say, I feel no divine, unerring instinct prompting me to walk in. I offer you no prison but a home, I cried excitedly. You would turn all homes into prisons, she returned. Prisons whose bars are the golden bars of love and duty. Yes, you take a woman's love and duty and fashion out of them her prison bars. Is that generous? I fancy not, but it is most ingenious. I don't even like golden bars, Mr. St. Vincent. And then she goes on to say, to live with you would be like living in a tomb. I lack the sense of fresh air, and there is no sunshine within miles of you. And I think that is really what Mona Caird is writing about. She wrote this wonderful essay kind of article in a newspaper in, I think, the late 1880s, perhaps 1887 off the top of my head, I think, and it was all about marriage and how marriage was an awful institution for women, and it sparked something like 27,000 letters in response because people felt quite passionately for or against her argument, and a lot of her writing is about marriage and how awful it can be, especially for women. And I liked some of the language she uses to end the story, and obviously it's a short story so there's no spoilers in this, it's just kind of what it's about. I think the wonder of a short story is discovering it for yourself in going back over it. There's not really any plot. But she uses, or Mona Caird uses, through the character of Mr. St. Vincent, language such as, the spirit of a coming age has brushed me with his wing, and then at the end she talks about the future. And so Mr. St. Vincent views Venora as a vision of the future. She, I think, is the new woman. She is what women will become. She's very different to some of the other characters in the story, and I really love that. It's such a wonderful short story. They can be quite hit and miss, but I loved that so much. If you haven't read anything by Mona Caird, you absolutely must. She's just so amazing. I've got to read the Yellow Wallpaper now. That's what I'd like to do before I go to bed, or at least read some of it. But while I've talked to you about that, I'm gonna plait my hair, because I always plait my hair before I go to bed. I always wear my hair plaited, and then I'm gonna read the Yellow Wallpaper. So my verdict on the Yellow Drawing Room is that, honestly, why aren't other people talking about this book or this short story? It's so good. I'm so glad I've just discovered Mona Caird. I can't figure out how I discovered her, but I downloaded some of her writing onto my Kindle from archive.org, which is the only place I could get it from, and I bought some from the iBook store as well. So I've been trying to work my way through those. So I've been reading The Wings of Israel, and she's just incredible. I just love her. I want to talk about her a lot more on my channel, probably during Victober, hopefully. That was a really brilliant short story. I feel like it packed a punch, and that's what I want from a good short story. I want something that's going to be super powerful and just, you know, even though it's short, it crams a lot in and keeps you thinking long after, which I think is what these writers are going for. It's a really brilliant collection full of really, really great short stories. I'd really recommend it. It's called Women Who Did, if you didn't catch that. And I'm looking forward to following the new woman from the 1890s through to 1914 when this finishes, because obviously things changed around 1914 with the First World War. The role of women changed. The new woman is interesting because it's quite a middle class, upper class movement. You know, not everybody could become a new woman, not everyone would have the freedom to become a new woman, so that in itself is very interesting. And I'm writing a book set during the 1890s at the moment for fun. I haven't got a publishing deal, got to preface it with that, but I'm writing something set during the 1890s, which is basically about a new woman has a character who is very much a new woman, and so that's why I've been reading lots of stuff like this. But I'm also reading it just because it's great, like, to read these powerful stories. Some of them are great, some of them I kind of agree with and feel like it's very modern. Some of them are kind of, yeah, you're half there, so why is the other half not there? Or like, you're progressive in this, but your views on that are just really odd. And so I found that really great. I like reading things that I don't necessarily agree with, because it kind of pushes my own opinions. You know, if you read something that you don't agree with, it makes you think about what you do agree with. So I've really liked that. And I'm going to read the Yellow Wallpaper now, and then I'm going to head to bed. I'm going to do some reading, and then it shall be lights out. I just finished the Yellow Wallpaper. I loved it so much more the second time round reading it, especially after reading The Yellow Drawing Room, reading more about the new woman and kind of what the book means or what the story means. I just couldn't get enough of it. I want to read it again, actually. I feel like there was so much I missed when I was reading it, in a good way. You know, when you read a book and you're like, wow, there's so much here. I was like, oh, I wonder what's happening. Like, the Yellow Wallpaper blurs the lines between fiction and reality. So it's about a woman who is trapped almost in a room, or is she trapped? That's the question. It's, with this book, I think, or with this story, it's all about, from a modern perspective, I suppose you could interpret it as about gaslighting. It's about believing women and not believing women, calling women insane when actually they're perfectly sane, but it's men or the patriarchy or society telling them that there's something wrong with them, as we also saw in the Yellow Drawing Room. It's about mental health, or is it? Because again, this is a woman who could be perfectly sane but is being told that she is basically insane. It's about, I think, the role of women as mothers, as wives, about doing your duty. And I think a lot of the language actually that is used is very clever. There's this kind of shift right at the end which I couldn't remember from reading the first time, and I was like, wow, I did not see that coming, even though I've already read it, because it was just so masterful. And I think a lot of the language in this is very interesting. It's a lot about using your voice as a woman, how women could use their voice in writing, in speech. Would they be believed when they spoke, or would their voice be valued? The language that the narrator uses in reaffirming that her husband loves her, this is why he's doing it, because he loves her. Well, that's something that, you know, a lot of people use to justify behaviour. Well, this is okay because that person loves me, when actually those actions aren't okay. And so that's why there's so much to unpack, because we've got an unreliable narrator here. Not because what that person is saying is not true or is untrue, but just because we don't know either way. What is truth? What is fiction? And I love that so much. It's been so good to read both of these stories back to back. I would really recommend it, particularly in this collection. If you read it, read them both side by side and look at what both of them say. I think the thing that connects them both is the colour yellow. So in the Yellow Drawing Room, Venora paints her drawing room yellow, and that is a sign of women's emancipation, women's rights. You can choose the colour of your drawing room, and that says something quite bold about you, about going against the crowd. In the Yellow Wallpaper, the wallpaper is the colour yellow, and it's a sign of oppression, of prison. There is this yellow wallpaper that moves. There's a woman within the wallpaper. The narrator can see this woman and is just entranced by the wallpaper. It takes over. The room is surrounded by this wallpaper, and there are bars on the windows. She can't get out, and she's very limited in the time she spends outside in the room. She's told she has to sleep all day and rest and get better. And so I love how they work in some ways in harmony, and in other ways they're saying opposite things yet demonstrating the same point. Almost you could say that if Venora were to marry Mr. St. Vincent in the Yellow Drawing Room, she could turn into the narrator in the Yellow Wallpaper, because she was talking about prison, of oppression, of marriage being like prison, and that's kind of what happens in the Yellow Wallpaper. If you've read the Yellow Wallpaper, I'd be really interested to know what you think of it. I've had so much fun this evening reading both of these. If you've enjoyed this, then let me know and I'll read some more short stories and vlog it. I'm hoping to do lots more reading vlogs too, and it's been so cozy. I love it. I'm gonna sleep now and I'm gonna have lots of nice sleep, hopefully, because I've been reading and that's just what I try and do every night. So I really hope you have enjoyed this vlog. I'm going to sleep now. Well, I'm going to turn off the camera and then I'm going to sleep. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching it and happy reading!